And so
I know you guys are probably very sad, since we're not going to get a lot of days like this together over the next couple of weeks, since we'll be traveling. But for those of you on the trip, I look forward to seeing you. For those of you that aren't, we're going to certainly miss all of you and your questions. It's a busy day here at the White House, like most days here. As you all saw, the president was excited to announce the Broadcom Limited is coming back to the United States, moving their company back here from Singapore. Their CEO credited the president's economic agenda for once again making the United States the best place in the world to grow a business. He also noted that the tax reform plan, which was rolled out this morning, will make it easier for them and other companies to do exactly what the president has promised: bring back our jobs, bring back our wealth, and bring back our great American dreams. This morning, the president applauded the House Ways and Means Committee for introducing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is another important step toward providing massive tax relief for the American people. Our entire administration is working tirelessly to make good on our promise to the working people who built our nation to deliver historic tax cuts and reforms, the rocket fuel our economy needs to soar higher than ever before. Now, as you all know, the president is preparing to leave the country tomorrow for a 5-country, 10-day trip to Hawaii and Asia. This afternoon, we have with us the president's National Security Advisor, General McMaster, who will preview the trip and take some of your questions. Please keep your questions on topic. If you have other questions, the press team will be around this afternoon and throughout the next 10 days while the rest of us are on the road. Thanks so much, General McMaster.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hey, good to see everybody. Tomorrow, President Trump embarks on his longest foreign trip to date and the longest trip to Asia by an American president in more than a quarter century. This trip is a great opportunity to demonstrate America's and the Trump administration's commitment to the Indo-Pacific and our efforts to strengthen long-standing American alliances and expand new partnerships. The president has actively engaged leaders in the Indo-Pacific this year to address a range of strategic issues, including, most notably, the North Korean nuclear threat. Since taking office, President Trump has placed 43 calls to Indo-Pacific leaders and conducted bilateral meetings with Japan, South Korea, China, India, Australia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. This historic trip will build on that ongoing diplomacy. The president's trip will focus on 3 goals. First, strengthening international resolve to denuclearize North Korea. Second, promote a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Third, advance American prosperity through fair and reciprocal trade and economic practices. The United States remains committed to the complete, verifiable, and permanent denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. President Trump will reiterate the plain fact that North Korea threatens not just our allies South Korea and Japan and the United States. North Korea is a threat to the entire world, so all nations of the world must do more to counter that threat. That is happening, but the president recognizes that we're running out of time and will ask all nations to do more. In particular, the president will continue to call on all responsible nations, especially those with the most influence over North Korea, to isolate the North Korean regime economically and politically, to convince its leaders that the pursuit of nuclear weapons is a dead end and that it is past time to denuclearize. And he will remind friend and foe alike that the United States stands ready to defend itself and our allies using the full range of our capabilities. The president will also use his trip to promote his vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The president will make the case that respect for freedom of navigation and overflight, the rule of law, sovereignty, freedom from coercion, and private enterprise and open markets is the best model to increase prosperity throughout the region and to secure the freedom and independence of all nations. And of course, increasing prosperity of the American people is always one of President Trump's top priorities. Throughout the trip, the president will stress his commitment to free, fair, and reciprocal trade. He looks forward to working with partners across the Indo-Pacific region to ensure that governments do not unfairly subsidize their industries, discriminate against foreign business, or restrict foreign investment. This will help increase trade, reduce unsustainable deficits, and promote prosperity for the American people and the people of the Indo-Pacific region. A final point, and a point that's often overlooked, this trip, like all the president's engagements with foreign leaders, builds on previous accomplishments and on previous diplomatic efforts. One example I'll provide is that in Riyadh in May, President Trump delivered a historic speech to the leaders of more than 50 Muslim-majority nations. The president will interact with many of those same leaders at APEC or ASEAN, both of those conferences. He will reiterate three key U.S. counterterrorism pillars that he unveiled in that speech in Riyadh. First, deny terrorists safe havens and support bases. Second, cut off their funding. And third, discredit their wicked ideology. I think it's time for us to recognize that there's been significant progress on all three fronts. Raqqa and Mosul have been liberated and will soon no longer control territory and populations, as the United States has worked very hard with allies and partners to deny that safe haven and support basis, in this case to ISIS. Second, we should recognize that there's been considerable progress on terrorist financing. As you saw, Secretary Mnuchin's visit to the region last week, during which he opened the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center. And then also, you've heard a lot of leaders across the world, and the president foremost among them, discrediting this ideology, this Islamist or Takfirist or Salafi jihadist ideology. And last week, I think it's worth reading Saudi Crown Prince, the Saudi Crown Prince's speech, during which he called for a return to moderate Islam. At the ASEAN 50th birthday party in Manila, the president will discuss how to strengthen partnerships across the Indo-Pacific to further efforts against transnational terrorist organizations. So this trip is an opportunity to build momentum towards shared prosperity and security, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you. Yes, toward the back there.
General, as you look at the tools in your toolkit for confronting North Korea, how much thought are you giving to putting that country back on the American list of state sponsors of terrorism?
Okay, that is an option that's under consideration, and so the president's cabinet is looking at this as part of the overall strategy on North Korea. But a regime who murders someone in a public airport using nerve agent, and a despotic leader who murders his brother in that manner, I mean, that's clearly an act of terrorism that fits in with a range of other actions. So this is something that's under consideration. And you'll hear more about that soon, I think. Yes, in front of the center.
Yes. Will the president be using the fire and fury rhetoric in his speech about North Korea when he's that close to the border? Will he be meeting with Putin on the sidelines? And will he be bringing up human rights when he meets with Duterte?
Okay, so the president will use whatever language he wants to use, obviously, and what the president has done is clarified in all of his discussions, his statements on North Korea, our determination to ensure that North Korea is unable to threaten our allies and our partners, and certainly the United States. So he's done that with a great deal of clarity in the past, and I'm sure he'll do that during the trip as well. And that's been of great reassurance to our allies, partners, and others in the region who are literally under the gun of this regime.
We shouldn't expect any modulation in the language because of where he is.
Well, I don't think the president really modulates his language. Have you noticed him do that? I mean, he's been very clear. He's been very clear about it. And let me just talk about this quickly. I've been aware of the discussions about, hey, is this inflammatory? No, what's inflammatory is the North Korean regime and what they're doing to threaten to threaten the world. I think there would be a grave danger if that regime didn't understand our resolve, the president's resolve, to counter North Korean aggression, and the president's made it very clear. Yes.
On the Putin and the Duterte
Is there a
sanctions?
likelihood during the course of this 12-day trip that additional multilateral sanctions will be announced pertaining to North Korea? And the second question I have has to do with China. In your view, General, are they doing enough to apply pressure on the North Korean government?
So on those questions, what you've seen is a concerted effort to isolate North Korea economically, and that's been combined with a major diplomatic effort that asks all countries to do more. There's tremendous momentum behind that now. We've seen countries across the Indo-Pacific region, but globally, doing more to expel these really, in effect, North Korean slave laborers who are a big source of income for the regime, to shut down a lot of illicit trafficking that was aimed to circumvent UN sanctions, and then also to shut down a lot of the money-making enterprises of this regime, oftentimes run out of their embassies. So you've seen a lot of expulsion of ambassadors, elements of the diplomatic corps, a restriction on this kind of activity, and the president welcomes that and appreciates it. But we'll also be asking others to do even more there. So it is both diplomacy and sanctions working together. China is definitely doing more. But obviously it's not enough until all of us achieve denuclearization. And I think what's really essential to remember about China's approach to this is China recognizes this isn't the United States or anyone else asking China to do us a favor. China recognizes that it is clearly in China's interest, in all nations' interests, to denuclearize the peninsula, and that's because of the direct threat from a regime like this with a nuclear weapon. But it's also because of the specter of the breakdown of the non-proliferation regime. And what if others in the region conclude that they have to arm with nuclear weapons? I mean, that's not good for anybody. So I think China will, as it always does, act in its interests. But I think this is an area where our interests are really clearly aligned.
General, you mentioned in your opening comments that the world is running out of time to deal with North Korea. If you could expand on that for a moment. And earlier this week, before the Senate, General Mattis was asked about the process by which the president might use nuclear weapons. And he said, well, if we were to detect a potential launch from North Korea, that is a scenario under which the president might act. Do you agree with that assessment? Has that been something that has been discussed here within the Situation Room or options presented to the president?
Okay. All right, so on the first, on out of time, we're out of time because approaches in the past have not delivered on halting and then reversing North Korea's very dangerous nuclear and missile programs. And the approach of the past has been that we'll be happy with something what some people call a freeze for freeze or suspension for suspension. And that's the beginning then of a long drawn-out negotiation process or talks during which the North Korean regime has in the past continued to develop its nuclear capability, continued to develop its weapons. Then upon delivery of a weak, not enforceable agreement, the agreed framework, for example, in 94, what that agreement does is it locks in the status quo as the new normal. And then, of course, North Korea then breaks the agreement and continues with the programs. So we're out of time to do that because of how these programs have advanced over time. So what it's time for is a really concerted effort to do everything all of us can to resolve this short of military action. In terms of scenarios, the president's always very clear. He doesn't draw red lines. He doesn't forecast directly or say directly what he's going to do. But what he'll do is he'll do whatever it takes to protect the American people and our allies.
I only raise that because
overseas.
General Mattis said it in open Senate testimony.
Yeah, and so what is clear is that the United States will respond with all capabilities available to North Korean aggression, and they're appropriate to that scenario.
Protecting something that might be happening.
Gentleman in the center, in the back. Yes.
Thank you, General. There have been stories coming out of North Korea and certainly parts of that part of the world that the North Koreans have targeted the president in different ways and Are you confident about his security, and have you heard any of the rumors about the targeting of him by Pyongyang?
Well, you know, whenever the president travels, our team does an assessment and will secure the president. And you know, we have extraordinarily capable forces in the region. And so that's routine for us, is to take all that into consideration.
How do you assess President Xi now that he has consolidated his power? Does it make it easier to deal with him on North Korea or harder?
Well, I think what the president will do is build on what was already a very strong personal relationship that they developed at Mar-a-Lago, and then also that build on a very substantive policy dialogue we had, especially on the security side, in Mar-a-Lago and in meetings since then at the G20, for example, and in multiple phone calls between President Trump and President Xi. And I would highlight three elements of that foundation for the U.S., Chinese, really the multinational approach to North Korea. The first of these is a recognition that North Korea is not just a threat to the United States. Remember in the old days you'd hear, well, this is really a problem between North Korea and the United States. Well, everyone acknowledges, China especially, that this is a problem between North Korea and the world. The second thing that's really critical is the universal acknowledgement that denuclearization of the peninsula is the only acceptable outcome. No more freeze for freeze, suspension for suspension. And the third thing is China's acknowledgement that it's acting in its interest, obviously, but that China has a great deal of coercive economic power. I mean, 90% of the trade, at least, flows in through China. And so the implementation, enforcement of the UN resolution holds promise, but there's more that can be done beyond that. And I think it's time maybe for nations to do more beyond what even has been called for in UN Security Council resolutions. Yes.
Two questions. One, just to follow up on the previous question. Have you guys determined whether there will be a pull-aside or a formal bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin during this trip?
No, that's not been determined yet, but we'll announce it if that's determined.
And secondly, I know we're focused on the Asia trip here, but I just wanted to talk for a second about the president weighing in on the man who's been charged with mowing down pedestrians in New York City. He called for the death penalty. Have there been any conversations in the White House about how that could complicate prosecutors' efforts and even help the defense claim that this person can't get a fair trial?
What the president wants is to secure the American people from this threat and from mass murderers like this, and so what he's asked is for options to take a look to assess if our tremendous law enforcement teams and our judicial system has all the tools they need to be able to combat this threat to the American people. So what we owe them now is we owe them options, options to take a look at to see if this is the time to reassess, change our capabilities in this area, in the area of law enforcement in particular. Yes.
Thank you, General. At your opening statement, you spoke about a lot of different freedoms, but I did not hear anything on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and self-determination, democratic values. And what I'd like to know is, are these things no longer as important to the United States under President Trump? Is he comfortable with authoritarian regimes consolidating power and moving away from democracy as long as they can help us accomplish larger goals, such as with North Korea and on any other subject?
What you'll hear is the president, when he talks about sovereignty, talking about sovereign nations protecting the rights of their citizens. You heard in just the preview, and you'll hear much more in the speeches and statements the president makes abroad about the importance of adhering to rule of law, to promoting freedom, individual rights. And so this is extremely important to the president, and I think what we ought to do is just look at the president's record. Okay, so in Syria, you have a regime that is a big human rights offender, obviously, in a number of areas. The murder, the torture, the displacement of 6 million people internally, 5 million refugees, mass murder of their own people with chemical weapons. Who stood up against Assad to prevent even further murder of chemical weapons? Yes, sir. The president did. I mean, if you look at the policy toward Venezuela, a regime that is consolidating its grip on power and denying their citizens their rights, the president's taken a very strong stance, along with our great Latin American partners, and on Venezuela. So I would just say, look at the actions, right? Look at the Cuba policy. Look at the shift from the old Cuba policy that enabled an autocratic regime and a new Cuba policy which incentivizes human rights and the development of free enterprise, for example, in Cuba.
I've asked you actually in this room several times, because I'll bring up again because you mentioned Venezuela, that the president and this administration has on many occasions condemned what's going on in Venezuela, but has not done the same thing with other leaders in the Philippines and in Turkey and also in Russia. The president seems to have no problem with some authoritarian regimes, but problems with others. And I'll ask you one more time, why is Venezuela different from Turkey or Russia or the Philippines?
Well, I think what the president's focused on is being effective in advancing and protecting human rights and advancing the rule of law. You've seen him do that in his relationship with we've seen him do it quietly in every relationship. And so how much does it help to yell about these problems? It hasn't really delivered in recent history anyway. And so I don't think that you should assume anything because you're not in the meetings, you're not in the phone calls. And the president has done quite a bit and will continue to do more to advance and protect human rights across all of our relationships.
With the president in the region, is there any concern or expectation that it could cause the North Korean regime to ratchet up their aggression? And are we doing anything proactively to prepare for some sort of acceleration in tensions?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that is ratcheting up North Korea's aggression is the North Korean regime itself. And so, what's important is for us to have the capabilities necessary and to have them in the right locations to deter conflict, and then, if necessary, to be able to respond to North Korean aggression. And we're doing that really with our allies and partners in the region, primarily our great South Korean allies who live literally under the gun of that regime and have since the armistice in 1953. And so we're working together with our South Korean allies every day to make sure that we have the highest degree of readiness. And of course, you've seen the most recent some of the most recent provocations involving missile launches over Japan, and North Korea poses a great threat to our ally in Japan as well. But as I mentioned, this is a global threat that requires a global response. Improving our military readiness, ensuring that we have the right assets, including strategic assets in the region, is immensely important to preventing conflict, and then making sure that we're prepared to respond.
General, there are some foreign policy experts, some intelligence experts who believe that the only route to a negotiated settlement between the United States and North Korea that would have China's support would be a very strong pledge from the United States not to seek regime change in North Korea, and also to remove U.S. forces from the Korean Peninsula and provide other methods for South Korea's defense. Is that something that this White House would even entertain?
Well, we're always assessing our strategies and policies based on the degree to which we think they're effective. Now, right now, we've said that the goal is denuclearization of the peninsula, period. And what you've seen is just the very beginning, maybe the end of the beginning of the president's strategy in the form of new sanctions in place now, much more work to do to isolate the regime diplomatically and economically. And I think we have to be a little patient here for at least a few months to see, what more we and others can do, including China, as some of you mentioned at the beginning. So I don't think we need to reassess our strategy now. I think we have to give it a few months, and then see what adjustments we might need to make.
Trade. You've obviously made that a point of this visit. Can you talk about who is going to be leading the U.S. conversations about trade, since we know that Secretary Mnuchin is not going, that we don't have confirmation of whether it's Ivanka or Jared or even the USTR. Can you talk about who's going to be leading those conversations?
So certainly our USTR is going to be leading the discussions on trade. In terms of trade, economic development, economic practices, it'll be our USTR, and then at times it will be reinforced by other members of the president's team. But really, it is the president's trip, so the president is actually going to be leading the discussions on trade and on security, and the rest of us are just there to support really his engagements and to make the most out of the visits as we can. So thanks everybody. Thanks everybody.
Can you stay for a couple others? Hi, Sarah.
That was the White House press briefing. Sarah Sanders did not take any questions. It was just H.R. McMaster, National Security Advisor, talking mostly about North Korea. This is Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. This is the post show for the White House press briefing. Welcome to the post show here at Right Side Broadcasting. Would like to hear what you thought about the press briefing. Kind of short today. The president is soon taking off for his Asia trip, his 12-day trip to Asia. He will leave tomorrow for that. So today was General McMaster talking about some of the things President Trump is going to be focusing on his Asia trip. But he really was, he took some questions too, and he really was asked, most of the questions were about North Korea. And but we'd love to hear from you. What did you think about the press briefing? And what do you think about President Trump's upcoming Asia trip? If you have any comments, write to me at @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and I will read your comments on the air. That's @Lookner on Twitter, @Lookner on Twitter. And another quick, just a quick programming update before we get to your comments. At 3 o'clock today, the president is going to announce his choice for the new, I don't believe it's a nomination, because I believe, does the Fed chair have to get confirmed? The things you don't think about. The president appoints the Fed chair. Does the Fed chair have to get confirmed? Hold on. So the president's going to announce his choice for the chairman of the Fed. And I heard some rumors it was going to be Powell, but I haven't seen that confirmed yet from like the White House or anything. So, but let me just see. Does Fed chair have to be confirmed? Well, they must be, I think maybe confirmed, yes, confirmed by the Senate. And rumor has it that Jerome Powell is going to be the choice for the Fed chairman. But anyways, that's going to happen at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, we will carry live President Trump announcing his choice for the chair of the Fed. Also today, we will be doing a stream probably after the Fed announcement sometime later today on this story which came out, which I just tweeted about recently right before the briefing. It's quite a big story. We're not going to talk about it right now because it's a little bit, it's not, we're talking about the briefing right now. We'll talk about this later. But it's a story that came out in Politico today where Donna Brazile reveals that Hillary Clinton was controlling the DNC throughout the campaign and even before the campaign. And there was actually an agreement between Hillary Clinton's camp and the DNC to make this happen. And this is Donna Brazile, who was head of the DNC for a while, and I believe headed the DNC at the last part of the campaign. She wrote this article. So it's pretty incredible to me. It's a pretty incredible article when you actually read what it says. And I haven't really seen reporting about it in the mainstream media. Maybe I've missed some of it. But anyways, we're going to definitely have a stream on this later today. My best guess is probably around 4 or 5 p.m. We'll let you know about a time for that when we actually set that up. But that's going to happen. So those two things coming at you today, later today. President Trump's announcement of the Fed chair at 3, and then we'll do a stream on the Donna Brazile article later today as well. So, but we want to hear from you now about what you thought about this press briefing. No questions for Sarah Sanders, just questions for H.R. McMaster, mostly about North Korea. Write to me on Twitter @Lookner, @Lookner. And thank you, Christine Bestian just made a donation. And Christine says, they owned the press today, winning. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Christine, for the donations. Those donations keep us on the air. We are viewer supported. So your donations are what pay our bills. So if you want to donate and support Right Side Broadcasting, support an alternative to the mainstream media, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a YouTube chat right next to the broadcast. Go to the bottom, click on the little $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. So let's check see if anybody wrote me yet about this about the briefing today. It's possible no, but I want to check anyway. Okay, I think I'm all caught up here. And the stuff McMaster was saying, some of the stuff he said, I had written down here. He said we're out of time because the approaches in the past haven't delivered. Denuclearization of North Korea is the only acceptable outcome. China is doing more, but obviously it's not enough. He said the administration is considering relisting North Korea on the list of state sponsors of terror. He said you'll hear more about that soon. He said the U.S. is willing to defend itself and its allies from the North Korea threat using the full range of its capabilities. And this is all stuff, it's nothing really new here. Although maybe the part about the administration considering relisting North Korea as a state sponsor of terror is new, but nothing very new here. But it looks like that is going to be a big focus on this Asia trip that President Trump is taking. Oh, I found this, which is in a little bit of an itinerary for the Asia trip, because I was thinking, where is he going exactly and when? So this is a statement from Sarah Sanders' office, and it gives you the itinerary of the trip. But just to sum up, President goes to Asia. He begins with Japan on November 5th. So I guess with the time change in the flight, he leaves on November 3rd and gets there November 5th. So he starts out in Japan. 2 days later, he goes to South Korea. Then a day after that, he's in Beijing, China. Then he's going to Vietnam on November 10th. On November 11th, he's going to still be in Vietnam. And on the 12th, he's going to the Philippines. And then he's going to stop in Hawaii on the way back from the Philippines. So Japan, South Korea, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Those are the countries President Trump will be at for the next 12 days. Wow. I'm not sure if we will have White House press briefings. I'm guessing we'll have fewer briefings, but I don't know for sure. I don't know, is Sarah Sanders going on the whole trip or any of the trip? And even if she's on the trip, sometimes what they've done on trips in the past is they'll do gaggles on the plane, on Air Force One or something. So whatever we can find, we will bring it to you during the trip. We'll try to bring as much coverage of that as we can. And I'm just going to check here to make sure. Okay, and again, if you, and David Obbs says that article in Politico here, she said, the one I talked about, we're going to do a stream about, David says that was actually an excerpt from her new book. I did not know that, David. Thanks for the heads up. But that was run today in Politico. Very interesting article. We'll talk about that. We're going to do a stream on that later on today. And also in the news today, it's so confusing. The House announced its version of President Trump's tax plan, and it's just it's so hard to keep up because it's from the White House you'll get one plan, and then the House will pass their version, and there's some differences in that, and you read through the differences, and I'm guessing the Senate plan will have different differences, so it gets kind of confusing. And for example, in this version, the estate tax is going to not apply, I think, until 2023. And when it does apply, it's going to apply to people not just who make more than 5 million, but more than 11 million or something. And there's just differences in here. And also there's this limitation now being proposed on the mortgage interest deduction for houses have to be below 500,000 for the interest deduction to apply. So it's hard to keep track of all these different versions of what's of these plans and the different things that are proposed. I'm sure even if the Senate approves of a plan and then the House and Senate get together, it's going to be somewhat different than this plan. But you can read about that. There are articles about their plan up on different sites now. I don't know all the exact differences between this plan and the White House plan that they had talked about. The White House plan wasn't specific about everything, but my head starts to explode when I try to keep all the details together, at least for the moment. So. But just want to let you know that's going on as well. Bob C. Your Uncle says, hi, Steve. Have you heard about a landslide at a North Korean nuclear test mountain that supposedly killed 200 people and will collapse? Yeah, Bob, I actually tweeted about that a few days ago when that was reported. There was a report from the Yonhap news agency, I believe it was, in South Korea, that in North Korea, they had a tunnel collapse. They were digging a tunnel, reportedly, at the mountain where they do their nuclear tests. And the tunnel collapsed and 100 people died, and then the report said, and then maybe 100 more died, like trying to rescue them when there was another collapse. So, it's hard to get firm news out of North Korea, but that was being reported. And there's speculation that their test mountain is very weak. After they did a nuclear test a couple months ago, there were earthquakes shortly after that, which experts said they thought was having to do with part of that mountain collapsing because it's become unstable from the nuclear tests that have been done there. So there's some speculation on whether they'll continue to be testing there. I saw someone make an interesting post on Twitter. I don't know if they have any idea what they're talking about, but the post was something like, if they can't test in that mountain anymore because it's too unstable, does that make an atmospheric test more likely? I don't know, but thank you for bringing that up, Bob. Jay Dizzle just gave a donation of $5. Thank you, Jay Dizzle. Jay Dizzle says, Happy Feet was right, Dannon was wrong. I have no idea what that means. Maybe I should, Jay Dizzle. I could try Googling it. I hope it's not something terrible. No, I don't see anything that comes up clearly. Someone feel free to explain that to me, but you might want to message me on Twitter rather than saying it in the chat, because if you say it in the chat, I might not see it. By the way, so if you want to know, as I mentioned, we're going to have a couple more videos coming on today, maybe a number more, but we're definitely going to cover the president making his announcement of the Fed chair. That is at 3 o'clock, so in only 43 minutes from now. And what else was I going to say? We're also going to have the stream on the Donna Brazile article in Politico today, revealing that Hillary Clinton was in control of the DNC throughout the campaign. And that sounds like I'm giving you an exaggeration of what the article says. It doesn't. It's not. I'm literally telling you what the article says and what Donna Brazile said, which I find fascinating. Because it's one thing if you saw some random report that said, I heard that this happened in the DNC, but this is from Donna Brazile, so she should know. And this is not in a conservative news outlet, it's Politico. So, as I said in my tweet, I wonder if the mainstream media will talk about this today. It seems like a very important story. It seems like from a very inside source, and a source that's not a conservative source. So I really wonder if that's going to be talked about today in the media. I think it's important. It's worth talking about. Let's see here. But anyways, if you want to know about those videos and other videos we have when we come on the air and do breaking news, we come on the air at all hours and cover breaking news. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell so you get notified when we're coming on the air. Also, you can follow us on Facebook at Right Side Broadcasting and on Twitter at RSB Network. And thank you so much to the moderators for moderating the chats today. And in the YouTube chat, we have Barbara, Braley, Real Frank, Guinevere is there. Right now, JC is there. So thank you all. And then on in the website, we have Common Sense and Glenn O. Pam Peacock made a donation too of $5. Thank you, Pam. Pam says, keep up the good work, Steve. Thank you, Pam. Really appreciate it. Sam Miller sent me a tweet that he wanted me to show. Looks like Pam donated twice. Pam, I hope that wasn't an accident. I hope you didn't only mean to donate once. If you did, let us know. But thank you, Pam. Very much appreciate your donations. So Sam Miller wanted me to show this on the air. It's a tweet from Chad Pergram, and it says, Trump on, for Fox News, it says, Trump on tax bill. The special interests will distort the facts. The lobbyists will try to save their special deals. It's so hard with tax bills because whenever you make a change to tax law, someone's going to be negative affected by it, pretty much. And like, they're going to complain pretty loudly. So, like mortgage interest deduction, if you cut it, then people who buy houses, are going to complain. And if you don't cut it, then people who aren't wealthy enough to own houses are going to complain. So it's so hard because usually the people who are negatively affected. It's trade-offs. Some people might get taxed more, some people less, but the people who get taxed more are going to be the louder complainers and the louder voices a lot of times. So it can make it very hard to change tax law. You'll get these big fights, and then you end up getting all these compromises in the bill because all these people are unhappy, and you're trying to, make certain groups okay with it. So get ready for a lot of that kind of thing happening. See here, I'm just checking to see. By the way, if you guys want to write me messages, we're going to be on the air a little bit more, and then we're going to soon, in 39 minutes, we're going to have President Trump's announcement of the Fed chair live for you. Let me just see if there's anything else that we're keeping an eye on, especially today. And in case you missed it also, I meant to show this tweet too from President Trump today. Oh, President Trump just tweeted about the World Series. I didn't know this. President Trump sent this out 51 minutes ago. He said, "Congratulations to the Houston Astros, 2017 World Series champions. Houston strong, earn history." But the President Trump, yesterday he suggested maybe the terrorist from New York City should be sent to Guantanamo. And he said today, would love to send the NYC terrorist to Guantanamo, but statistically that process takes much longer than going through the federal system. Then he said, there is also something appropriate about keeping him in the home of the horrible crime he committed. Should move past death penalty. Now, a couple things, some critics have said the president shouldn't be mentioning the death penalty here because this could, in theory, this is, not in theory, there's going to be a trial, and a defense lawyer might argue that the president is making it harder and impossible to get a fair trial by mentioning the death penalty, implying the person is guilty. Although there's of course a lot of evidence that this person is the person who did this, out there, but that's a complaint you might see from some people. And then, there's this other issue also. So President Trump mentions statistically that process takes much longer than going through the federal system. Another concern is that there are all these questions. To send the terrorist to Guantanamo Bay, you would have to declare the terrorist an enemy combatant. It's a debated legal question whether someone who's someone who's a U.S. legal resident and is arrested in the U.S. could be declared an enemy combatant. And there's other. Enemy combatant is a designation that was created by the Bush administration after 9/11, and there are lots of legal questions about that enemy combatant designation, who it can apply to, and that kind of thing. So by not declaring the alleged terrorist in NYC an enemy combatant and sending him to Guantanamo, it does avoid a lot of possible legal difficulties that could come up with that. Hey, we got another donation from Nazreen, the opera singer, gave $5. Thank you so much, Nazreen. Very much appreciated. Your donations keep us on the air, so we really appreciate those donations. If you'd like to donate, you can always go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Garrett, you just said, hey, Steve, maybe it needs some investigation first, but Hillary had her hand in the cookie jar again. You must have missed it because you sent me a link to a story about the Donna Brazile article. I already said we're going to do a live stream on it later today. So, Garrett, watch our live stream on that article later today when we do it. Thanks for writing in, though. Just checking. Oh, another story that was interesting today that I want to quickly mention, and this is not a President Trump story, but it's the Catalonia story. Where is this? I tweeted out about it earlier. So a Spanish court has ordered 9 former members of the disputed Catalan government, including the vice president, to be jailed as they await their trial. I think they're jailed without bail, and they are pending trial for rebellion, sedition, and misuse of public funds for a secessionist campaign. Now I don't know, have they been arrested yet? I don't believe they've been arrested yet, if I have that right. But the Spanish court has ordered that these people be jailed, which could definitely be inflammatory for the people who, for the population, the part of the population that wants independence in Catalonia. It could definitely be inflammatory to jail these people. And these are the people, these members of the Catalan government are the people that the people of Catalonia did vote to be in their government, but they could be jailed soon in Spain. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Okay, we're going to be on there just another minute or so here because soon we are going to go to our coverage of the President Trump's announcement of the Fed chair. That announcement's going to be at 3 o'clock. And then later today we will have a Donna Brazile stream. Donna Brazile stream about that Donna Brazile article about Hillary Clinton being in control of the DNC throughout the campaign. So if you want to see that, subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell. Thank you, Jerry OOG, for your donation. Also gave $5. Very nice of you, Jerry OOG. We appreciate your support. He says RSBN rocks. Okay, I think at this point we are going to wrap up the coverage here. Pretty soon, we should be starting up the coverage. There's not going to be a pre-show and post-show for the president's announcement about the Fed chair, but I will be coming back probably around 4:35 p.m. to do the stream on the Donna Brazile thing. So we will post that soon and let you know when that's going to be. But for now, thank you guys all for watching, and thank you for writing in. And for your donations, especially, really thanks to donations. But also, not just especially, we really appreciate the donations, but we also appreciate you writing in and you watching, and the moderators in both the YouTube and the website chat room for moderating the chat. And thank you so much to Jake Seals and Joe Seals for helping produce today. And by the way, if you want to follow Jake Seals on Twitter, @JacobRSBNMusic. Joe Seals is at Joe Seals. Jude Seals, the head moderator, is @RSBN moderator. Jerry just gave a second donation. Jerry, it looks like you copied the person before who gave 2 donations. That's very nice of you. Who was that? That was Pam Peacock. Thank you, Jerry, very much. Either you guys are making 2 donations or the YouTube system is malfunctioning and processing 1 donation as 2. But I hope it's the former. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up right now. We will see you later today in a very short time, we'll see you for the president's announcement of the Fed chair and also for our Donna Brazile stream. And let's see. Thank you for saying thanks in the chat room. We have JC there saying thanks, and Barbara and Light Switch and Golden Oak, thank you. Elysia Site said thanks, thank you. Nazarene, thanks. And JC, and everybody else there in the chat. So wrapping it up for right now, join us in a half an hour from now, President Trump making his announcement of the Fed chair. We will be carrying that live. For now, I am Steve Lookner from all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting. Have a great rest of your day.